Hey everybody, we are starting our Thursday nights off with Tamco Tech Live. Today, the topic of subject is going to be HC895, our very versatily used Intercoat clear. It has many purposes, and today I'm going to show you a few. I can't do that much, like I can't actually spray it and where I am, but I'm going to do a couple different things, a couple different demonstrations to show you the many different ways that I can show you how well 895 works in various different applications, whether it's being used as an intercoat carrier, whether it's being used as a carrier for actually just all kinds of custom colors, whether it's the Stellar line, which I'm going to show you today, which the candies, which I'll also show you, flake, different things. I'm going to show you different ways that you can actually mix and use the 895 to carry in various different kinds of ways. It's not just a carrier for actual flakes or candies or base coats. It can actually be used for a wet bed. It can be used to blend your colors on a panel for a color blend when you're trying to achieve that fade that you don't want to see as, in your face. When you want to do that really good blend, the 895 is an awesome product for being able to do that. So we're going to go over a couple different things today that allow you to do that. It also works really, really well as a wet bed. Now, a lot of people will say, well, what is a wet bed? We'll discuss today what a wet bed is, how to use 895 to do that, different ways of actually functioning with it. So what I'm going to go over right now is probably just a little bit of tech first on 895, and then I'll flip it around and I'll show the different things that I brought today to be able to show the actual 895 in use. Just mixing, ways of mixing it, ways of reducing it, ways of catalyzing it, which a lot of people don't really realize that the 895 itself can actually be catalyzed if you want to catalyze it as well. So let me go over a couple different pointers of different things. So people will ask, what is an intercoat clear? An intercoat clear is not actually a clear coat. So a lot of people kind of mistake the idea that it's actually a clear coat. It's never meant to be used as a clear coat. There is no UV protection. There is no protection from the elements. There is no durability to it in that aspect. It's basically the best way to think of it is like a clear base coat. Only real way to think of it is being like a clear base coat with added features. Meaning your average base coat, if it was like your binders that you could use, they're not going to do the same things the 895 is going to do. They're not going to function in the same kind of way. The 895 has different things built into it chemically that allow it to function really well when it comes to suspending flake, being used as a carrier for candies or for pearls or different things where you don't have to worry about having a stacking limitation like you do with a lot of the competitors' intercoats on the market. There is no stacking limitation when it comes to the 895. You will have no issues with doing multiple layers of however many layers you need to do. You'll have no issues doing that. Whereas the competitor intercoats, a lot of them on the market, you do have issues when it comes to layering them multiple times. You can catalyze this if you choose to. There'll be different ways in which you would want to catalyze and not catalyze. For instance, if you're doing a wet bed, we'll explain the wet bed part of it first. If you're sanding a job, like I explained to Chad Kidder in the group earlier, he was wanting to do 320 and he wanted to know what to do with the 320. Does he need to go up to 600 to have good adhesion for the black base coat, or can he go straight to it? Now, truthfully, you could go straight to 320 with black base coat from Tamco all day long. You'll never see the scratches. It would completely bury the scratch. It would never be an issue. But if we're discussing wet beds, and like I said to him, if you're discussing wet beds, what you would do is you would take one coat of 895 reduced 1:1, and then you would spray it over top of your 320 scratch. That would fill in the 320 scratch enough to where when you went to go over top of it with something else, it would never cause it to sink or like fall into that scratch. So the biggest issue with a wet bed and why a lot of people want to do it really comes down to metallics. It comes more into metallics or pearls where when you have an aggressive scratch, the material wants to fall into that scratch. It wants to go into the grooves and it will pull into the grooves and it will make the color look different. So the idea of using an Intercoat clear or the 895 would be to take that and fill in over top of that scratch, and it would instantly make the scratch become less aggressive. It would be where when you do one coat of 895 over top of that scratch, you could flash it, and you could go instantly to your metallics, to your pearls, and it would not do that. It would not fit, it would not fall into it, and it would work perfectly. So that's one way of using it as a wet bed. It doesn't add that much time. Like he had mentioned, well, why wouldn't I just prime it? Well, priming it takes a lot more time. You have to sit there and you have to mix it. You have to catalyze it. You have to clean your gun differently whenever you use a primer. Intercoat Clear cleans up really, really quickly. It sprays quickly. It flashes quickly. So in a lot of cases, an Intercoat being used in a wet bed fashion is going to be one of the better ways to do it. The other way that you can do it would be if you want to use it to carry, say, like a flake. So when you're actually going, and we'll show you a flake demonstration here in a few with a FBC gold flake, and I'll show it mixed into the Intercoat Clear and kind of show how it suspends the flake really well. The agents that are in the 895 help keep the flake suspended. There was a test one time where somebody had taken various different kinds of Intercoat Clears, lined them up, and Tamco was one of them, and they put flake in every single one of them. And the Tamco was the one out of all brands that helped the flake stay suspended the best. So when you're going to spray it, the average thing that most people have to do is kind of like twist their wrist to constantly keep the flake in suspension, or put, little balls inside of the actual cup to keep the flake suspended. And you have to just shake your wrist in order to keep that done. When it comes to the 895, the way that it's designed, it actually does the suspension really well, which you're not having to constantly flick your wrist to make sure that the flake is staying in suspension. It does it automatically, even reduced at a 1-to-1 mix ratio. Another way to use the 895 would be to take a Kandi Concentrate and mix it into the Kandi Concentrate, and we'll go over this, we have before, but we'll go over it again on a really good reduction in the mix for putting the Kandi Concentrate into the 895. Another option would be taking your pearls, like the Stellar series, for instance, that we released, which is a really high strength pearl, and it does best let down. So the way that we're selling the Stellar pearls right now, 1 quart of it would actually make much more than just a quart of it, even at the reduction. It's so high strength that you can take the Intercoat Clear and you guys can just mix however much pearl you want into it and make the strength any way you want. That way you can spray it over top of an OEM color, you can spray it over top of a black, you can spray it over top of any color you want and achieve the effect that you're looking for simply by reducing it any way you want to with an Intercoat Clear, which will help stretch it. It can be used in all kinds of fashions. It can be used to protect your artwork, meaning you've sprayed airbrush, you need to leave, you want to make sure that your work is protected. You would take the Intercoat Clear mixed 1-to-1 with reducer, and you would just simply spray a coat of it over top of your work. It would lock it down and it would keep it protected. A really cool feature with our Intercoat Clear versus a lot of other people's Intercoats is it rewets itself. So a lot of people will say, well, what does that mean? Rewetting means that when you take the same exact product and you go over it the next day at a 1-to-1 mix ratio and you just go back over top of your Intercoat without sanding the surface with a mechanical bite like you would normally have to do, 895 will open itself back up chemically and it will automatically stick with the next coat following suit. And that would allow you to continue on with whatever you're doing, whether it be airbrushing, whether it be anything else, you would be able to do that. So it works really, really well for that. You can catalyze the Intercoat, but realize that when you catalyze the Intercoat, it then takes away some of the features, meaning you could no longer rewet it once you catalyze it. Catalyzing the Intercoat will, in a sense, make it act like a clear coat. You would have to scuff the surface before moving forward for any kind of adhesion after you catalyze it. Once you catalyze it, you cannot continue to go over top of it throughout the rest of the day like you would normally be able to do with Intercoat Clear. Because once you catalyze it, it then goes into the actual recoat times window like it would if it was a clear coat or anything else that takes a catalyst. So there are times and places to catalyze it, especially when doing multi-layered work, but then you have to realize that you take away some of the characteristics or you take away the ability to continue to move forward. So pick and choose where you're going to want to catalyze it. When you do catalyze it, it's a 16-to-1 mix ratio, and I will show here shortly you taking the actual Intercoat reduced and catalyzing and how to do that. It's very simple, it's very simplistic. We'll show you how to do that. So somebody had mentioned whenever I was saying that I wasn't feel real inspired on what to do for the live today, someone had said that they wanted to see how strong 9500 was, or high impact. 9500 or high impact have the same strength, have the same flexibility, impact resistant, scratch resistant, things like that. So I have 2 lures here and I have a hammer and we're going to beat them and we're going to show you how durable they are. But we'll save that to the end because it's pretty cool and I want to keep you here watching. So we will get this flipped around here. And I've had this hat. I've worn this hat during a live before. I just haven't worn it in a while. We do not sell it. I had it made, but The only other person I've ever seen with the same hat with his own name on it is Daryl Sargent. So I think me and him are the only ones in this group that probably have the hat. So let me flip this around right now. Hold on a second. Okay. So today we have our teacups that we have, and I have these in the 650. They come with a hard cup, 50 of the liners, one of the collars, the caps. If you want to save your color, like I do, you take one of these caps, they give you 20 of these, and you just pop it up top, and then it instantly plugs it to where it will not leak any of the solvent or any of the stuff in there, which means you actually, in theory, can store your color in this. Now, something I do like about it as well is that even without the hard cup, because you only get one hard cup unless you buy them separately, that when you get the hard cup, with paint in this liner, with this lid actually on it, it actually stands on its own without a hard cup. So if you wanted to know if you could store it, if you hold, I wouldn't hold it this way because it's soft, but if you were to hold it from up top and move it around, with paint in it, you can. And I've been storing Stellars in the smaller containers at work, and it works perfectly. So that's our little plug there for the teacups. We completely sold out of them. We have an entire pallet coming in tomorrow, so they'll be restocked on the website sometime tomorrow when the order comes in. But again, they're $70, and they're the best deal in all of replacement liners and cups in the biz. No matter which size you get 50. You get 50 of them for $70. Okay, so today we have our Stellar Pearl and Violet. I picked the Violet just because, I don't know, I kind of like the Violet better. I think it's one of the cooler colors that we did. We have the Tangerine candy here, which is one of our cool orange candies that we have. I have the Hardener, which you don't have to use the HX57, but I grabbed the HX57 off the shelf when I was leaving just because the instructions on it do tell you to mix it with the 895, but in truth, you can also use your 7605, your 7603, or your 7607 catalyst 16 to 1 and have absolutely no issue doing that. This, I posted a video earlier of a pink, and I didn't name it, and I don't have any intentions of naming it right now, and I'm not saying what it is, but we're gonna utilize this today. So it's our mystery magenta-ish pink, is what I named it just for the video. We have some Pat Dry Gold Flake in the .008 mini. We're gonna use that in there. We got the hammer, we got the lures to beat here later, and then we got the topic of the hour, the 895 Intercoat Clear. So what we're gonna do here is, Sean, if you would grab this and use it here, facing. We're gonna take one of the liners. It's already in there, already put it in there. We're gonna take the 895 Clear. It's got some information on the side, just 1-to-1 with reducer. But the reducer that we're going to use is the 1370. It's kind of the all-around good temperature for using it in miscellaneous ways. You could also use fast if you want to for very small things. And if it's warmer, you're gonna wanna use the 1380, which is a slow. You could even use the 1390 if it was really hot and you're in a humid area and you're doing something large. So when you take the Intercoat Clear, it's a 1-to-1 mix ratio. On the CTW cups or the T cups, there is not a 1-to-1 mix ratio on there. Truthfully, it's a very simplistic ratio. It's not rocket science by any means. You should be able to figure this out just by using the milliliters. You double the milliliters. So if we're gonna go to the 100, you're gonna go to the 200 with a reduction. It's very easy. You guys are painters. You should know how to do this. So what we're gonna do first for using we'll use the Stellar. I'm gonna go up to the 100. And you do not need to catalyze the Stellar. The Stellar has no need to be catalyzed at all. You don't need to add any catalyst to that. So here is the Violet Stellar color. Let me stir it up. You didn't stir it. So you guys can see the consistency. I haven't really shown well the consistency of it, but they're very strong. And if the light hits it right, you can see it. But this is the Violet. They're very, very strong, meaning a little of this creates a very heavy effect for a long ways. I mean, in this container right now, there's less than a pint, and I could do so much stuff with this pint, with this less than a pint. It just does so much. So I'm not gonna pour into this straight because I don't want that strong of an effect. So I don't know if you guys do this, but I just a lot of times will take a stick and I just kind of drip it in because I don't want a lot. So what I'm gonna do, I think, is I went to the 100. I'm just kind of like dumping some in here for an effect. We're just doing this to show you what it looks like if you mix it up. Okay, so we're gonna leave it there. And that puts it, and remember, the stellar pearl is a pearl, but it's still suspended in an agent like a base coat, like an intercoat, like a binder. So when you're looking at your mix ratio, whatever you added into it, you have to treat this like a base coat, meaning you have to reduce this the same way that you would reduce a base coat. No different. You have to do it the exact same way. So that made it go up higher. It's basically at 125 right now. So obviously, if we're doing math and we know how to do that, we're going to go up to 225. At a 1-to-1. So that's going to be in between the 200 and the
250. 125 and 125. 250.
Oh, right. Sorry. See, I can't even add. Okay. Stir it up. And if you look at it, like we didn't even put that much in there. Literally just put a little bit in there. And it already has a very, very strong effect. That may not look that strong in there, depending on what you're doing, but right now, if you were to take this at this mix ratio and you were to spray one coat over top of a black, you would instantly see it. Instantly, it would have a purple color. Like, so what it looks like on here, it just has like a very light lilac kind of a look to it. But once it's sprayed over black, it has a completely different look to it. It becomes like a violet. It looks like a deep purple. The more you spray on there, the more you achieve that look. The more coats you do, the more you achieve it. Now, if you wanted to do it faster than what we did here, you could add however much you want to. You could always add whatever you wanted to and just increase the strength, increase the intensity, and go from there, and it would work perfectly. So that's one way to use it whenever you're doing an intercoat for just like the Stellar series. Now, it doesn't matter if it's Stellar, by the way. You can do this for anything. You could do it for any other pearls in the series, like anybody else's pearl, our pearl. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's a base coat. You want to make a transparent base coat. There may be times where you want to take a color and you want to weaken the strength of it and you only want to put a little bit in there for effect. You would do it the same exact way. It doesn't matter what it is. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is grab another one of these liners. And we'll show Flake Lash just because Flake is messy and I don't want it to screw up anything. Okay, so this we're just going to do a little bit. We're going to go to the 50. Actually, I got to do it differently because the way Kandi goes, it's a 5-to-1. So we're going to do a little bit different. I showed you guys this when we did the actual Kandi Live. I showed you how to do it. So when we're doing Kandi, the way that you want to do it so that you're not over-concentrated is to go 5-to-1. I've had a lot of people contact me that whenever I explained the 5-to-1 that it made a lot of sense to them and it made it more simplistic. That way they had a range that they knew to always go to. So 5-to-1 works the best in my opinion. It keeps you under the 20%, which keeps you from being over-concentrated. When you're over-concentrated with your candies, you start to lose adhesion. You don't want to do that, especially when you're doing custom work. You don't want your tape to be able to pull up your candy and lose any kind of adhesion when you're doing so much work. You want to make sure that you stay at this mix ratio. So take into consideration that our concentrates are stronger than the competitions, which is a good thing, but just use them properly and utilize them in the way that we tell you to, and everything will work perfectly. So this is actually the same Tangerine that I had used during a live before. It's no different, same one. It's been sitting in the container. We're at the 5. So what you're going to want to do, we're at the 1 at 5-to-1. So what you're going to do when you're going with Kandi is you're just going up to the next one. That's it. Right there. And that puts you 5-to-1. So whenever you're wanting to, and I have to go grab something really fast. Whenever you're wanting to make sure that you have the perfect concentration, perfect strength, you're going to want to do that with the Kandi. And then you could go from there on how you want to do it. Now, obviously, when you're doing it as an intercoat, you're going to want to reduce this. I'm not going to reduce it right now just because I don't really feel the need to reduce it and just kind of waste it. I can use this differently any way I want to if I don't reduce it. So we're going to stir it up here. And whenever you do it, actually, I'm going to go ahead and reduce it because this is something that Dennis had noticed too. So when we're doing it as a base coat, it's a 1-to-1 after you've catalyzed it. Now, a lot of people have asked me this. When you're doing the concentrate, how do you do it? Do you put the concentrate in first? Do you put the reducer in first? No, you put the concentrate in, then you reduce it. You would also put the concentrate in before you actually add the activator to it as well. Okay, so this right here is the reduced version of the Tangerine orange candy. You can see on the stick it's clean, which is a good feature of it. Sometimes candies can have seediness to them. One of the features that people have been very happy with, that have been testing it and have been, using it, is that they do not have the seediness that's common with some of the concentrates out there. One of the brands specifically in the Tangerine, or not the Tangerine, but the orange version, seediness is a common thing. So that's what it looks like there on the sides. That would be a way to mix and reduce a concentrate using our actual Kandi Concentrate there. So the next thing that we're going to do,
Hold on a second.
pop the lid on it.
Hold the cup.
Comes right off. Actually, we should do that with this one too. Just to kind of show you guys how it works when you go to just pop it on there. I do want to show something because, hold on, lesson learned, because I've done enough to know. If you're not, if you pop this on and you think you have it popped on, sometimes you don't. Sometimes just doing this does not pop it on, and then you'll realize that when you go to put it on the gun and you dump it upside down that it leaks. Or sometimes I've noticed that if you don't do it right or you don't know what you're doing and you go to pop it on, it still leaks just sitting here in the cup for whatever reason because it's not on there right. So when you pop it on, I always spin it just like that. And then for whatever reason, that makes sure that it's completely on there and it will not leak. So now once you've done this and you put the lid on there and it has a stopper, it just stands on its own. So you can store it any way you want. Just lift it up, store it. You're good to go. Okay, so the next way we're going to do it is, we're still going to save the flake for last. So this is the way of showing you that you can take your colors, no matter what they are. It could be intensity, which when you're using intensity is very strong. It needs to be let down in 895. Basically, under no circumstance do most people just use it 100% as is. Some will go 1-to-1, some will go 1-to-2, some will go 1-to-3, just simply with reducer when it comes to the intensity. But a lot of people will take the 895 and they'll weaken the strength some because the intensity is so strong. So what you're going to want to do when you're doing it as a base coat, we're just going to go back to this again. We don't need a lot, so we're going to go to the 50, which I'm going to go a little bit over just so you guys can see it. Okay, so this right here, I'm going to shake it up just in case it's settled. This is the color that I shared the video to that you guys were seeing. It's not named, it's just the name for the video. The stuff that it has in there, you're going to want to shake it well, just because you want to make sure that all of the stuff is suspended properly. And it's a base coat, so you're still going to want to go and treat it just like a base coat. I'm going to go up to the, it's 50, so I'm going to go up to the 100. And if you notice from the video and you saw it on the stick, you can see that it's transparent. I don't know how well you can see that in light.
Bring it over here, under the light. Yeah.
It's really pretty. So I haven't said what it is. It's just a mix, a custom mix that I've done, that I've been playing around with. And it may be something that we do here after we release candies and things like that. This may be a line that we decide to end up releasing. I'm not sure yet. But what you saw in the video was 100% strength. It was in a quart can that I poured into this. What you're seeing right now is not 100% strength. You're seeing it let down 1-to-1 in 895. You don't have to do that. You can use it 1-to-1. What I made and what's in that can, you actually could just do 1-to-1 with reducer, and you could spray it over top of whatever you want to. Whether it be black, whether it be silver, whether it be white, whatever you would want. It has a pearl in it, so it's gonna look really, really good. But I let it down a little bit more now because this is just showing you that you can basically use this any way you want to. And when we release it, if we end up releasing it, you'll be able to see the multiple uses of it. I plan to do some things with it to kind of show it in use. So this right here, so we're going to reduce it just to kind of show it reduced. This would be a 1-to-1. So that's utilizing the 895 to take and do whatever you want with your colors. This is supposed to be transparent. That's the whole point of it. So you guys are probably wondering if it has candy in it. It has candy in it. It also has other pearls in it. So there's different things that I plan on doing with that to kind of create maybe like, you know, a more unique way of doing things. You guys could do a lot of this on your own too. You could be taking your Kandi Concentrates and you could be taking your 895s and you could be mixing them together. You could be taking the stellar pearl. You could be putting a little bit of the stellar pearl into your own mix. Now that's not what I did here. I used a completely different pearl that's not in the stellar. And that's probably why when you were looking at the video and you were looking kind of when it went down into the can, and I don't know if you can see it here, but you could tell that the pearl wasn't your standard pearl. It had the ability to reflect multiple colors. And that's because the pearl that we used in it reflects multiple colors really, really well. So that's something that's different than anybody else is doing, because most of the pearls they're using are just your like standard white pearls or different things like that, where they don't really have the ability to reflect multiple things. Whereas if you go like maybe into the cup, you can kind of see the different pearls, but it does not just reflect a traditional looking pearl. It reflects much, much more color. And in the video, you see that much more than you do here, just based on the lighting at work and stuff like that. But that's something that we'll go more into at a different time. We'll explain what it is, how to maybe you could do it yourself, or just basically ways that we'll already be doing it ourselves where you could purchase it for sale. So that's that. The last thing we're gonna do, showing the 895.
Before you do that,
yeah,
you should go back and maybe people have questions. You want to answer some questions before we do the flake.
Okay. So let's see. Have there been any questions that I haven't got to? I'm assuming that other people in the group have been answering questions for me, so that's kind of why I haven't been. But I don't really see any other questions here so far. And it doesn't always show me everything either, so I don't think it shows me everything. You guys are planning to release it, quit playing. We'll see. Okay, I don't see anything else as of right now. Here.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna do the 895 and we're gonna do flake. So when you're doing flake, there is no real method to flake. I have people ask on a regular basis, how do you do flake? What's your ratio? Anybody you know that does flake, I don't think there's a person that you know really that does flake that does any kind of measurement. It's basically just dump it till you find your own method. Everybody that does this has their own method. I see guys that literally just take a container and they just dump and dump and dump until they're comfortable with where they are. They do this on a regular basis. They know the strength of what they're doing. They have their own ratio in their heads.
Or you can use measuring spoons.
Or you can use measuring spoons. I think you put the wrong lid on. And I don't want it to contaminate my
I didn't.
895. No? Then why does that one look like it has paint in it? Maybe I put the wrong lid on. That one looks like it's got color in it. It'll mess up our other stuff. Okay, so take the 895. It's still 1-to-1 with flake. We'll do a little bit more on the flake, just so you guys can see it. So we're gonna go to the 1. I'm going to reduce it first, and then I'm gonna put the flake in. Because the flake does not, you adding flake does nothing to the reduction. The reduction still stays 1-to-1, it doesn't matter. This is horribly messy. This is a bad idea. So we're just gonna dump some in there just for effect. And if you see how much I dumped out of the container, that's how much. Again, there is no real like true method. It's whatever you want, whatever you prefer, however strong you want it. If you don't want it strong, then don't put a lot in at one time. And then that will actually change the strength of what it is. This right here, depending on what you were doing, if you're doing like a small project, that's a lot. That's pretty consistent right there.
I love gold.
It's actually a really cool color. We do sell this on the website. It's called 21 Karat Gold. It's pretty over all kinds of things. This would be pretty over black. It would be pretty over top of a red if you were to put this over top of a red. Pat Dry, when he does his lures, he uses a lot of his flake. I don't believe that's one of them. I think this is out of his Slow Rider line on both of these, which we sell those as well.
That's the one that changes.
Yeah, the Slow Rider changes.
Flippity flop.
So these ones are the Slow Rider, but you could take them, you could put them over lures like he does. You could put this stuff over anything you want to, anything that you want to bling. I love flake, so I think this is cool to go literally over anything. But this right here would be a way that you would utilize it. So if I just stop, just so you guys can see what we're talking about, I don't stir it, and you just see it keeps it suspended well. So obviously you would need to see this sit over time to kind of understand how well it keeps it suspended. You know, different brands that you use, you'll start to see the fall of happening rather quickly, where we'll just have a harsh settlement, and you'll start seeing a really harsh layer of Intercoat reducer and then just flake being at the bottom. What we're known for is the fact that the flake in this Intercoat will stay in a suspension level before it fully settles to the bottom longer than most people's on the market. It's one of the main features that a lot of guys, even on Instagram, that you see doing flake for a long time now, have always liked about using our Intercoat, because it does keep it suspended so much longer than any of the other brands out there. So if you're a flake person and you're not already using our Intercoat Clear, I highly recommend that you get the Intercoat to carry your flake, and it will be a game changer in what you do when it comes to flake. And it doesn't matter whose brand of flake you use, it works well. So that is carrying flake. That was basically the all ways that we wanted to do it where we were going to carry something. So there's no other interactive things that I have to show you actually carrying something other than that. I think I know what's wrong. Yeah, this one goes here. I don't want to ruin and contaminate all of my reducer in 895 because I put a candy lid on top of it. Are there any other questions that you see popping up? You guys have any questions on any of the products? Have you ever had any issues with the Intercoat cracking or splitting a few months later? No. And that's one of the things that I kind of talked about before, but I want to talk about a lot of the Intercoats. And let me kind of flip this around here for a second. When you're using a lot of the Intercoats on the market, it's not flipping. There we go. When you use a lot of the Intercoats on the market, they're known for having issues with actually splitting or cracking or delaminating or whatever the issue may be down the road, because they do have stacking limitations, meaning you're not supposed to do multiple coats of this at one time. Back in the day, one of the competitors had said that you could do however many layers of Intercoat you needed to. You could carry your concentrates in the SG100, for instance, and never have an issue. Later down the road, they changed their stacking limitation to really not wanting you to go over 2 coats. That's how their product is made. So you have to follow what they state when using their product for carrying whatever it is. They don't want you going over 2 coats, so don't go over 2 coats when it comes to the SG100. But when you're using the 895, there is no stacking limitation. Now, do I want you putting 10 coats? No, because really there are mill build limitations. You don't want to go over a certain mill build. You start to have issues. You don't want to start putting a ton of product on when you're doing custom stuff. You want to eliminate your build where you can. In a lot of cases, using an 895 carrier to carry your items versus using an actual clear coat will keep your mill build lower. When you're doing custom work, you do need to start making sure that you count how many layers of things you're doing. When you're doing your substrate layers of your primers or your epoxies, and then you're coming back with your base coat colors, whether it be silver, whatever it may be. Whenever you're coming back over top of that, carrying an Intercoat for your flakes or for your candies. When you're taping and you're doing more work, and then you're stacking and you're continuing to stack. When you're clearing that session, sanding that back down, clearing over top of it again, you're stacking your mills. That can start to cause failure if you don't pay attention to where you are. Intercoat Clear, because the mill is thin like a base coat, it is like a clear base coat, you are not stacking so many mills when you do that. So if there's people that want to carry their flake in a clear coat, you can. But when you're getting to a point where you have a lot of material, you may want to reconsider using a clear coat to carry that when the mill build would be that much higher. Now, one thing you could do is you could carry in a lower solids clear. If you carried it in a more lower solids clear, that would take a lot of that away. One thing that we did create that's really good for something like that is our CC3000. The CC3000 is a carrier not just for clear coats, but for anything. You could carry flakes or anything you want in there. Now, I wouldn't recommend carrying base coats in it, but I would do dry flakes, dry pearls, or Kandi Concentrates. And you could carry that in that candy. It is a lower solids clear. And that way, when you do that, you don't have to worry about having so many mill builds stacked. It's low enough solids that it works well for doing that. So that's how I would do if you're using the 895 for anything like that. So if you're putting, say, 4 coats or 5 coats of 895, down the road, it is not going to crack. It's not going to delaminate. It's not going to split or anything like that. This isn't a new product. This isn't something that we just released. This is something that we've been making for as long as we've been making 2104 and the rest of the clears. This is a proven, true product. It's been around for a very long time and used by many people. People who don't even use the Tamco line fully because they're using other companies. which is fine, but they still love that Intercoat clear and they still like to use that. And I know that there's the whole thing about not intermixing and things like that, and everybody has their own way and their own idea of what you should or should not do and what you should follow for, different manufacturers' procedures and things like that, and for warranties and different things. But when it comes down to it, we all know that a lot of people will intermix, and that 895 is something that is compatible with other people's paint lines. So if you're wanting to know if you can use 895 with other companies' paint lines, you can. That's your choice. That's your decision on whether or not you want to do that. Could you use the 895 to carry somebody else's Kandi Concentrates? Yes. Could you use the 895 to carry somebody else's liquid pearls or anything other than that? Yes. It's completely universal and compatible in that aspect. Will it work best with our system? Of course. The way that the ground up is built, the way that we use our solvents, the way that we use our resins, it is something that will flow naturally better with the Tamco line. But you do not have to do it when it comes to an Intercoat. It is a more universal product and it will function that way. Now, some people had said, I've seen the blush before. It's always cleared up when you clear it. 895 is something that is reactive to moisture. It's reactive to temperature. For instance, my oldest son's bike was sprayed by Sean for his birthday a couple years ago. He took the entire frame, and I told him that I wanted the entire frame sprayed in flake. I didn't want you to see anything but red flake. No black, no anything, just hammered in red flake. Well, his birthday's in January. It was very humid, only humid because it was damp, and he was spraying it. It was like 50 degrees outside or even colder, and when he went to go spray it, it instantly just turned white. And what will happen is the Intercoat clear does not like the moisture. It doesn't like the humidity. And it will turn milky. It will turn white. Now that will go away. You sanded it, correct? Whenever he did it, he sanded it, and then he redid it later, and you didn't see that. It's not like it ruined it. It will go away. And in most cases, when you clear over top of it, it will make it disappear no matter. So even if you do see it turn white, one thing you will always notice of why that happened, it was either raining, it was cold, or it was humid. And if one of those three conditions happened, it will make the 895 turn milky on the substrate that you sprayed, but it will go away when you clear it or just let it dry. It will not stay like that.
It happened on the SEMA candy machine.
True. And actually SEMA was not cold. It was warm for SEMA, but it was humid, and it had previously rained.
It had rained, and I didn't have a choice because we were on a time crunch, and I 9500 cleared it.
And it went away. And the clear just kind of melts it in, and it will make it go away. So if you don't, you don't have to. If you want to cut the strength of the Stellar series, you can mix in 895. That's true. So you can use it like today, Kevin Kegler, he sprayed the Stellar blue over top of a black and over top of a purple. I don't know his mix. I haven't really been paying attention to if he told you what his mix was, but you can mix it 1-to-1. So it says my can of Stellar just said mix it 1-to-1 reducer. Was I supposed to cut it with 895 first? No. So if you want to use the Stellar 1-to-1, just use it 1-to-1. Just realize that it's going to make it the strongest when it's 1-to-1. You love the effect that you created. That was perfect for you. But if you want to reduce down the strength and you want to make it less in your face, take a couple more coats to reach that look, maybe have a more muted ghost effect, maybe have something less in your face. Remember that the Intercoat clear is the best way to thin that down to the liking that you want. You don't have to. You can do whatever you want. You can mix it 1-to-1, 2-to-1, whatever you want to do. It's very versatile in that area. Using it for the intensity is a must. If you have the intensity line, you're going to want 895. If you want to protect your artwork, you're going to want 895. If you ever want to do a wet bed, you're going to want 895. If you ever want to do a color blend, you're going to want 895. It is the most versatile product that we sell, period. No other product that we sell has this many uses for this many different products in the entire line. It is almost like the backbone of the custom industry for what we do, but not just that, because you could utilize this as a collision painter every single day doing wet beds and doing blends. So it's not just a custom versus collision painter thing. It can be used for anything. You could be doing a restoration job and still use the 895 as your wet bed. All kinds of different uses for it. So I kind of feel like it's a product that all kinds of people could use. It could always be on your shelf and you would always be very happy with it, and something that you could reach for on a regular basis depending on what your project is. Let's see. Any other questions? If I missed the answer, sorry, but how long can you let the 895 sit? Example, I do artwork on Monday and do one coat but don't get to clear it till Friday. So 895 rewets itself, which was what I was explaining before. So say you do your work, you come back a week later. One of two things could happen. One is you scuff it. You clean it, you move forward to clear coat. If you want to skip the scuffing part, then you would just spray another coat of straight 895 mixed 1-to-1 over top of the pre-existing Intercoat clear, and then that would re-wet it and give you a chemical adhesion moving forward. So there's two methods: scuffing, cleaning, spraying clear, or spraying 895 reduced 1-to-1 right back over top of it. There actually is a third method. You could take the adhesion promoter from Tamco, you could spray it over top of your 895, and then that would actually reopen the window and let you go straight to clear as well. So two different ways you could do it that way, or the third would always be the tried and true way that people do, which is scuffing it. You could do whatever you wanted in that aspect. Stellar white over a color like red, wonder what that would look like. It would look good. You just have to realize that when you put things like white pearls over bright, vivid colors, you're going to mute the intensity of it. You're going to make it look less intense because white's going to kind of not necessarily milk it out, but make it look less bright, more like covered by the white. So you may want to choose a different color to go over top of it. You might not want to do white. You might want to do something else. Thank you. I just want to make sure I heard it from Tammy. What was the other product you mentioned along with the 895? The Intercoat Clear? Not Intercoat Clear, that is the 895. The adhesion promoter, was that what you were talking about, Aaron, when you just asked the question? I don't spray intensity with 885 ever. And that's kind of what I thought. So a lot of people I talk to, because the intensity is so strong, it is so concentrated, 1 8-ounce container yields you so much product that most people are taking it and they are reducing it with 895 to be able to make it work the way they want it to. For Kandi, it's a 5-to-1. So when you're doing 895, or if you're using the carrier or whatever you're putting it in, it's a 5-to-1 and then go from there. But you should always use carrier or clear, 5-to-1 with the product and the one part being the actual Kandi. And then go from there, whether you're reducing it, whether you're adding a catalyst to it, whatever you're doing, start with the 5 being the actual product that's holding it, the one part always being the Kandi. Okay, so it's 9:43. I want to get to the beating of the lure here now because I don't want this to go too long. So you want to
do it or you want to do it?
It's up to you. You can beat one, I can beat one.
Just don't beat me.
I wouldn't do that. I need you to hold the phone. Okay, so here's a hammer. We haven't done anything to this. It's coated in 9500. That's the whole point of using 9500 on these lures or anything else. It's very impact resistant, very durable. It's perfect for that. So people had asked, is this durable? Is this impact resistant? Is this something that's going to be able to take aggression or, like lures sometimes are being dragged along the rocks of the riverbed or whatever it may be? Can the clear coat handle the abuse? Josh Steele has done videos like this before. Pat Dry shared a video earlier where he was beating a pair of glasses that he sprayed using 9500 clear. One of the very first videos that Josh Steele had ever done was taking the high impact, not the 9500, and beating a pair of Oakley sunglasses. The glass was falling apart. The paint never once chipping, period. So right now we're going to take this, hold this down, and just hit it.
Okay.
I mean, I hit that hard. I'm going to show first. So hitting it as hard as you heard, that's what it did. Now, if I'm going to hit it not as hard as Sean hit it earlier, this is what it would do. Let's flip it around this way. It does pretty good. Now, nobody's ever taking a hammer and hitting their surface. So that's just kind of like we want to show. Maybe do it this way so you can see the top of it. That's the top of it. I don't know. I still see gloss all over that on the top. You don't feel any dents in it. So again, nobody's ever taking a hammer and beating the substrate of what they're doing. So I would say that that's pretty good test. If I were to hit it harder, I probably could break the lure. It's just plastic. So you guys are wanting to see that. You want to beat one, Sean, and I'll hold it? Mm-hmm. You're going to break it?
No. Nothing.
Pretty good.
I mean, that's pretty impressive.
when people ask, like, how durable is this clear? There's a reason that they use this clear coat on the goalie masks in the NHL, because whenever a puck was hitting these masks, they were shattering off of it. The clear was not sticking, it was shattering. And then if it wasn't doing that, they were not able to get an entire season out of it, because it would have so many chips all over it. It would get into the artwork, and then the actual helmets would be destroyed. The masks would be no good. Like, you couldn't get an entire season. So one of the guys I was talking to was actually telling me that these players were actually able to get whole seasons out of these masks when they were using the 9500 clear, because it was that durable. And it was impressive because they spend a lot of money to get these masks custom painted, and they were not lasting. And it was almost, you know, like a big deal. So a lot of people started using this because of how durable it is. So I thought we were going to ruin these. These are still good. We can still use those to fish with if we wanted to. Okay, so I think that's all we're going to do for today. We'll figure out another live here soon on, you know, what we're going to do. We plan on, when it warms up here some, I just bought an inflatable booth. So I don't think I told a lot of people that, but I just got an inflatable booth. So we plan on doing more lives, doing them differently, not continuing to do them here. But whenever you have kids and it's cold and things like that, it's more difficult doing this late at night. So eventually, when it warms up here a little bit more and we get a little bit more set up, we're going to have the blow-up booth that we have. We're going to start doing, you know, different lives where it just is more detailed, more hands-on, things like that. So eventually we'll get there, you know, just with what we have going on and how busy we are and having kids and stuff like that. Sometimes it's hard, but we do have intentions for that. Again, thank you guys for watching tonight. Thanks for all of the questions. I hope you learned something that you didn't already know, in a way to be able to utilize the Tamco products a little bit easier, things like that. So have a good night, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk about what the next one's going to be. Tamco live in the kitchen, like my sister just said. Peace out, guys. Have a good night.